Family, we are living in a time where truth is rising like the morning sun. No longer can we afford to settle for half the story. Watered down history or truths kept in the shadows. The apocryphal books, Enoch, Jasher, and Jubilees, are rising back to the surface, not by accident, but by divine design. These books were never lost. They were hidden, and what is hidden is often the most powerful. Now the Most High is calling a people with ears to hear and eyes to see, people who are ready to go deeper, people like you. Let us step into this truth with 3 key revelations. 3 that the Apocrypha offers to our generation. The Book of Enoch. There is more beyond the veil. There is something stirring in the spirit realm, something ancient, something divine, something that has waited patiently for generations to rediscover. The Book of Enoch is not just a historical manuscript or a dusty relic from a forgotten time. It is a trumpet sounding in this generation, reminding us that the world we see is not the only world that exists, that there is more beyond the veil. And when we begin to understand that truth, we begin to walk differently, speak differently, live differently. We are no longer bound by the shallow dimensions of man-made religion. We step into the depth of divine revelation. The Book of Enoch begins with a bold premise. It was not written for his time, but for a future generation. Enoch says plainly that his words are meant for those who will live in the day of tribulation. A generation who would be searching, hungry for truth, ready to be awakened. That's not a coincidence. That's prophecy, and it's being fulfilled right now. We are that generation, the ones who will dare to open the books the world tried to bury, the ones who are ready to go beyond the surface, beyond tradition, and look into the mysteries of the Most High with pure hearts and hungry spirits. Enoch was a man who walked with God, not in theory, not through ritual, but in truth. And because of that intimate walk, he was taken up not through death, but through elevation. He was chosen to witness the hidden workings of the spiritual realm. He saw the order of heaven, the cycles of the stars, the names and roles of the angels, the judgment of the wicked, and the promises for the righteous. He saw the watchers who fell from their place and corrupted the earth with forbidden knowledge. He saw the Nephilim, the giants born from unnatural unions between the heavenly and the earthly, and he saw the coming judgment that would restore balance to creation. Now imagine, this book was removed from many canons, not because it contradicted scripture, but because it revealed too much, because it lifted the veil, because it called out fallen systems and revealed the war behind the scenes. That's not just censorship, that's spiritual warfare. Enoch's words are dangerous, not because they're false, but because they're true, because they expose things religion wants to ignore and empire wants to suppress. But when you read the Book of Enoch, something shifts inside you. You start to realize that your struggles aren't just earthly, they are spiritual. You start to understand that the enemy isn't just a system, it's a realm. And that realm doesn't want you to know how much power you have when you walk with the Most High. That realm doesn't want you to know that you were created in the image of a God who commands stars and speaks with angels. That realm fears your awakening, because once you awaken, you can't be controlled. Once you see beyond the veil, you stop bowing to idols. You stop chasing validation. You start walking in purpose, in clarity, in divine alignment. The Book of Enoch does not lead us away from Scripture. It leads us deeper into it. It gives context to Genesis. It gives clarity to Revelation. It bridges the gap between heaven and earth, between prophecy and history. It shows us that God is not just the creator, He is the righteous judge, the keeper of time, the revealer of secret. And when Enoch writes about the Son of Man, the elect one, the anointed who would sit on the throne of glory and judge the nations, he is speaking of none other than the Messiah himself, long before the Gospels were ever penned. That means the Book of Enoch is a testimony of Yeshua, a prophetic witness to his divine authority, written before the flood, preserved by the hand of God, and now revealed for us to rediscover. This is why the veil had to be lifted. This is why the truth had to return in our time, because the systems of this world are collapsing, and only those who see clearly will survive. Only those who are grounded in truth will not be shaken. Enoch's vision teaches us that there is order in heaven, even when there is chaos on earth. That judgment is coming, but so is restoration. That those who walk upright, those who fear the Most High and live by His righteousness. They will shine like the stars forever. Now more than ever we must remember that the physical world is not all there is. We are spiritual beings having an earthly experience. The war we are in is not just about politics, or race, or economics. It is about souls. It is about light and darkness. And the Book of Enoch shows us that the battle is ancient, that it began long before we were born, but it also shows us that we are not powerless, that the Most High has a plan, a righteous judgment, and a people He is raising up to stand in this hour. You are that people. You are not here by accident. You are not waking up to these truths by coincidence. You are being drawn, being chosen, being equipped to carry a revelation that has been sealed for thousands of years. And just as Enoch was taken up because he walked with God, so too will the remnant be lifted. Maybe not physically, but spiritually, mentally, emotionally. You will rise above deception, rise above despair, rise above fear, because you know who you are, because you see beyond the veil. So let the world laugh. Let them say it's just apocryphal, just old myth, just religious fantasy. Let them doubt, let them mock. But you open the book, you read it with discernment, you study it with prayer, and you let the Spirit of the Most High reveal what's been hidden for such a time as this. Because the veil is lifting, the truth is rising, and the Book of Enoch is not just a text, it is a trumpet. It is calling the righteous to awaken. It is calling you to remember that there is more to your life, more to your calling, more to your story. The question is, are you ready to see it? The book of Jasher. History has a backbone. There is a reason the enemy wants to erase history. A reason truth has been buried beneath centuries of colonization, distortion, and silence. Because when you know where you come from, you begin to understand why you were created. You begin to walk with purpose, power, and confidence. And that's dangerous to every system built on your confusion. That's why the book of Jasher is so important. It's not just a forgotten text. It's a foundation, a reminder that our faith, our heritage, and our spiritual legacy has a spine. History has a backbone, and the book of Jasher helps us stand tall. The Bible we've come to know is powerful and sacred, no doubt. But even within its own pages, it points us to Jasher. Twice in the books of Joshua and 2 Samuel, we are told to consult the book of Jasher. That's not a suggestion. That's a call to dig deep. That's an open door, an invitation to uncover more of the story, to fill in the blanks, and strengthen the roots of our understanding. Because there are things in Genesis, Exodus, and beyond that make far more sense when Jasher is placed beside them. Jasher is the missing puzzle piece. It's not extra, it's essential. The book of Jasher doesn't rewrite scripture. It reveals the heart behind it. It stretches open the narratives we thought we knew and gives us the rest of the story. Abraham doesn't just appear from nowhere. Jasher gives us his full journey. We see his wrestling with idolatry. We see his boldness in confronting the wickedness of his father's house. We see how he was tested, how he left everything familiar to follow the voice of the Most High. And suddenly his obedience isn't just admirable, it's relatable. He becomes not just a patriarch, but a model, a mirror. Jasher shows us that our ancestors were not perfect, but they were powerful. They were flawed, but they were faithful. And their faith wasn't passive, it was active, raw, and real. The book of Jasher shows us men and women who stood up in the face of adversity, who made hard decisions, who wrestled with doubt, and still believed. It reminds us that faith is not about comfort, it's about covenant, and that covenant is the backbone of our story. We learn about Noah not just as the builder of an ark, but as a man mocked by an entire generation. He warned the people for decades. He lived righteous in a lawless world. He was a builder of salvation when the rest of the world had drowned in rebellion. That's not just history. That's a blueprint for living today, because we too are building in a storm. We too are walking in a time when the world mocks righteousness. But just like Noah, we must build anyway. We must warn anyway. We must walk anyway. The book of Jasher is full of these moments, divine snapshots of courage and conviction. We see the courage of Jacob as he flees from Laban, and stands face to face with his brother Esau. We see the loyalty of his son. We see Joseph's story unfold with far more emotional weight. His betrayal, his pain, his rise to power in Egypt, not just as a survivor but as a deliverer. It's no longer just a children's story. It becomes a generational map of how pain can lead to purpose, how exile can birth elevation, and how one man's endurance can bless a whole nation. These are the stories that put steel in your spine, that remind you that the same God who stood with them stands with you, that you too come from a line of warriors, prophets, dreamers, and kings, that you don't have to search for your identity in the world when your lineage is inscribed in divine history. And that's the danger of a people who know their history, a people who know they were never slaves at heart, never orphans, never forgotten. When you know that your ancestors walked with God, governed nations, received visions, and led revolutions, you stop walking with your head down. You stop settling. You start rising. That's what Jasher gives us. It's not just a record, it's a reckoning, a wake-up call. It breaks the lie that we are disconnected from the story. It puts us back in the narrative, because this book is not just about them, it's about us. Their courage is our courage. Their legacy is our inheritance. But make no mistake, this is why it was hidden. Because empires are built on the erasure of true history. If they can convince you that your people were insignificant, then they can convince you to accept injustice, to stay quiet, to sit small. But once you pick up Jasher, you realize that your ancestors were not background characters. They were central to the story of God's plan on earth. And once you realize that, you can't go back to silence. You start to understand that righteousness is not weakness, that obedience is not passivity, that the Most High has always raised up a remnant, always chosen a people, always had a plan, and you are part of that plan, not just spiritually, but historically. You come from a line of those who were tried by fire and came out shining. So no, we are not starting from scratch. We are not building from nothing. We are building on the bones of those who stood before us, on the prayers of the righteous, on the blood of the faithful, on the promises of the Most High that stretch from generation to generation. The book of Jasher is our evidence. It is our reminder that our roots are deep, our history is rich, and our story is far from over. This generation is hungry for truth, for connection, for clarity. And the book of Jasher is one of the keys. It is time to unearth it, to study it, to teach it to our children. Because when we do, we give them more than information. We give them identity. We give them pride. We give them proof that they were never a mistake, never a footnote, but always a part of the Most High's unfolding masterpiece. So read it, share it, live it. Let the stories strengthen your resolve. Let the testimony of the righteous fill your bones with fire. Because history has a backbone, and when you stand on it, you will never fall. The book of Jubilees. Return to the rhythm of the Most High. There is a rhythm to the universe, a divine heartbeat that echoes through time, through creation, and through the very soul of those who walk with the Most High. The book of Jubilees is not just a sacred text, it is a callback to that rhythm. It is a divine compass pointing us home. In a world that thrives on noise, chaos, and confusion, the book of Jubilees whispers clarity. It tells us that the Creator is not random. He is not guessing. He is not improvising. Everything he does is intentional, ordered, cyclical, and rooted in divine time. The book of Jubilees is often called the Little Genesis, because it parallels the book of Genesis, but fills in the missing detail. It reveals the structure behind the story, the calendar behind the covenant, the patterns behind the promises. It tells us that time itself is sacred, not just any time, but appointed times, times established at creation, observed in heaven and meant to be honored on earth. It reveals how the Most High established Sabbaths, feast days, and jubilees long before they were given to Moses. These were not just laws, they were divine rhythms meant to keep us in sync with the Creator. In a modern world that has divorced itself from sacred timing, we find ourselves tired, confused, disoriented. We chase after productivity but lack peace. We celebrate holidays that have no holiness and forget the appointed times of the Most High. We mark our lives by man-made calendars and miss the windows of divine visitation. But the Book of Jubilees reminds us that we were created not just to worship God, but to move with Him, to align our lives with His timing, to live by His seasons, to honor His rhythm. Jubilees pulls back the curtain and shows us how the patriarchs lived in covenant, not just through belief, but through lifestyle. Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob didn't stumble into righteousness. They walked in rhythm. They observed the appointed times. They kept the Sabbath. They understood that rest was not weakness. It was worship. They knew that obedience to the divine calendar brought clarity, blessing, and favor. They didn't serve God on their own terms. They didn't treat time as common. They honored what was holy. Because of that, they were blessed beyond measure. The Book of Jubilees also confronts a deep spiritual truth, that deviation from divine timing is the root of disorder. When the children of Israel drifted from the Most High's calendar, when they adopted foreign customs and neglected the feasts, they lost their way. They forgot who they were. They broke rhythm, and every time that rhythm was broken, chaos followed. Because the moment we step out of alignment, we step into confusion, and the enemy knows this. That's why he has worked overtime to distort time, to twist the calendar, to erase the feast days, to turn Sabbaths into shopping days, and holy convocations into afterthought. But the Most High is restoring that which was lost. He is awakening a generation that will return, not just to belief, but to alignment, not just to worship, but to rhythm. He is calling a people who will remember the old paths, who will honor the cycles of heaven, who will observe the feasts, not as burdens but as blessings. Because these times are not just rituals, they are appointments. They are moments where heaven touches earth. They are divine encounters set on the calendar of eternity. The Book of Jubilees reminds us that every 7th year is sacred, that every 50th year is liberation, that every Sabbath is a doorway. It reminds us that time itself is a tool of deliverance, that God uses appointed times to bless, to release, to forgive, to restore. This isn't religion. This is revelation. The rhythm of the Most High isn't meant to restrict us. It's meant to realign us. It's meant to free us from the slavery of this world's pace and bring us back into the peace of divine order. And isn't that what we need now more than ever? In a world that glorifies hurry, that monetizes every second, that never stops to breathe or be still, the rhythm of God is resistance. To return to His rhythm is to say, I am not a slave to this system. I move by a higher clock. It's to reclaim our time, our rest, our joy, our worship. It's to step into a cadence that is eternal and unshakable. It's to remember that we were created not just for productivity, but for presence, divine presence. Jubilees also teaches us that this rhythm is generational, that covenant is not just about us, but about those who come after us. The book is structured in Jubilees, cycles of 49 years, each generation part of a divine continuum. That means what we honor now will echo into the future. Our obedience today becomes our children's inheritance tomorrow. When we return to divine rhythm, we don't just heal ourselves, we heal our bloodlines. We break curses. We release blessings. We restore the ancient paths. This is why the Book of Jubilees matters so much in our time. Because the enemy has worked hard to disconnect us from our roots, to rewrite our history, to confuse our calendars. But God is waking up a remnant, a people who will not be led by culture, but by covenant. A people who won't bow to the chaos of this world, but will move in the peace of heaven. A people who hear the sound of the shofar in their spirit and know that the appointed time has come. We are those people. This is the hour, and Jubilees is the blueprint. It is not just a historical text. It is a prophetic manual, a divine metronome, a holy reminder that the Creator is still in control of time, and He is inviting us back into step, back into alignment, back into rhythm. So we must ask ourselves, are we living on our own clock, or His? Are we walking according to culture or covenant? Are we moving in sync with heaven, or dancing to the drumbeat of Babylon? The Book of Jubilees calls us to return, not to religion, not to ritual, but to rhythm, the rhythm of creation, the rhythm of rest, the rhythm of redemption. And when we do, we will find peace that the world cannot give, clarity the world cannot distort, and power the world cannot deny. Because when you return to the rhythm of the Most High, you stop running in circles, you begin to walk in purpose, and you realize that divine timing is not just about the calendar, it's about your calling. You were born for such a time as this. Let your life move in harmony with heaven. Return to the rhythm. The Most High is waiting.